You know, some mysteries feel like they're just designed to stay buried forever. This is the story of one of them, a 40-year-old murder case with literally no leads, no name, and no hope. Well, that is until a college student and a whole army of internet strangers decided it was time to start digging for the truth. This is how they pulled it off. And this is where it all starts. Not with a clue, but with a ghost. See, back in 2014, a 23-year-old biology student named Christina Skates was just scrolling through old cemetery records online when this one single haunting line stopped her in her tracks. Unknown white female bones. Somebody had been murdered, buried, and then just completely forgotten. And for Christina, that just wasn't right. Now, Christina wasn't just any student, okay? She was a really skilled amateur genealogist, and she had this talent for digging up forgotten stories. But this case, this one was personal. The remains were found only 20 minutes from where she grew up. So this wasn't some distant tragedy. This was practically in her backyard. She just couldn't let it go. And that persistence set off a chain reaction that would end up captivating the entire internet. So to really get what Christina was up against, we need to go back, way back to 1975, back to a forgotten victim in a case that went cold almost the second it started. Okay, so February 15th, 1975, 3 teenagers are out exploring a nature reservation when they find partial skeletal remains. The skull told the whole story. There was a .24 caliber bullet lodged right in the left temple. I mean, it was clearly a homicide. But with no way to figure out who this young woman was, the case hit a dead end, like immediately. Just 3 months later, she was buried in an unmarked grave and officially forgotten. And you can see why the 1975 investigation just stalled out. The skeleton was incomplete. It had been out in the elements for months. Her jawbone was gone, along with most of her teeth. There was no ID anywhere, no missing persons reports that even came close to matching, and no family ever came forward to claim her. The case was, for all intents and purposes, impossible. All right, let's jump back to the present day. After hitting wall after wall in her own research, Christina realized she couldn't do this alone. She'd taken her solo mission as far as it could possibly go. She needed more eyes on this case, the kind of collective brainpower that really only a dedicated online community could provide. So Christina starts calling police department after police department, just running into bureaucratic walls until, bam, she gets her first big break. A lieutenant named Don Silvis of the Cleveland Metro Parks Police, he was different. He saw how genuine she was, he saw her expertise, and he did something pretty extraordinary. He gave her copies of the original case files. We're talking crime scene photos, reports, everything. And with that crucial info in her hands, she knew exactly where she had to go. She posted everything she had on the subreddit r/unsolved mysteries. Now, if you don't know, this is a community of over 400,000 members who are obsessed with cold cases. So instantly, she had this massive pool of collaborators. These weren't just true crime fans. These were people who were genuinely outraged that a victim could be so completely erased by the system. And the response was immediate. It was overwhelming. Users on Reddit and another site, WebSleuths, they kicked off this huge collaborative investigation. They were cross-referencing databases, digging through digital archives, basically casting a research net that was wider than any single detective could ever hope to manage. An army of digital detectives was officially on the case. Now, this community effort was powerful, for sure, but they needed a real breakthrough. And it came from 2 places nobody saw coming. From a retired accountant with a really unique artistic skill, and from the discovery of a shocking system failure that had kept this victim hidden in plain sight for decades. So let me introduce you to Carl Koppelman. He's a former CPA in California who became a skilled forensic artist in his retirement. And when he first saw the case photos, he was skeptical. The skull was damaged, it was caked in mud, missing key features like the jawbone. He basically said, "There's no way I can do anything with this." But something about the case just wouldn't let him go. So he decided to give it a shot. Using 3D modeling software and his deep knowledge of facial anatomy, he painstakingly started to build a face from nothing but fragments. And for the first time in over 40 years, this Jane Doe had a face that people could actually connect with. Now here's the crazy part. There was a tool that should have solved this case years ago. It's called NamUs, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. It's a national database designed specifically to stop cases like this from falling through the cracks by connecting unidentified remains with missing persons reports. But there was a huge problem. So while Koppelman was working on another case, he just happened to mention this Jane Doe to the medical examiner's office. And their response was shocking. They said, "What bones?" They had no record of her. A simple clerical error, probably just a typo back in the 70s, meant she had never, ever been entered into NamUs. For decades, she was completely invisible to the one system designed to find her. Once that error was fixed, the case was finally entered into the system, along with Koppelman's reconstruction. And the impact was immediate. In December of 2016, a police sergeant in Akron named Jeff Smith came across the new entry. He cross-referenced it with old reports and found a 17-year-old girl who went missing in 1974. And when he put her photo next to the artwork, the resemblance was just unmistakable. This Jane Doe finally had a name: Linda Marie Pagano. And a name, well, a name changes everything. The mystery was no longer about unknown white female bones. It was about Linda Pagano. It was time to learn her story and finally bring her home. So, who was Linda? Well, she was just 17 in 1974. She was petite, only 4'10", with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her friends called her Mitch and said she was honest, hardworking, and really independent. She worked at an A&W, saving up every penny for a gold Mustang. She was super close with her mom, but she had a really tense, difficult relationship with her stepfather, a man named Byron Claflin. On her last night, Linda was having the time of her life at a massive Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young concert. She got home late, around 4 in the morning, and her stepfather was waiting for her. They had a furious argument, and he threw her out of the house. She was reported missing the very next day, and she was never seen alive again. So with this potential match, the final step was science. In 2017, investigators exhumed the remains from that unmarked grave. They sent samples for mitochondrial DNA testing, comparing them to swabs from Linda's living siblings. And in June 2018, the results came back. It was a definitive match. The case was officially, finally solved. For Linda's brother, Michael, the news was just overwhelming. He had actually suspected these were his sister's remains way back in 1975, but police just dismissed him. So after 44 years of not knowing, he finally had an answer. And his words here, "I thought I would die wondering," they just capture the family's profound relief and total amazement. Finding Linda was a huge victory, but it opened up that one last painful chapter of the investigation, right? They knew what happened, but now the question was, who was responsible for her murder? The primary suspect was always clear: her stepfather, Byron Claflin. He was the last person to see her alive. But there was a major problem. Claflin had died in 1990, nearly 3 decades earlier, and he took any secrets he had to his grave. With the main suspect gone and another key witness who was never located, the family had to accept this really frustrating reality. They might know in their hearts who did it, but it could never be legally proven. You know, the incredible legacy of this case is how the persistence of one student, the power of a digital community, and the skill of a forensic artist didn't just solve a murder. They gave a name back to a girl who was basically thrown away. They gave a story back to a family who never, ever stopped searching. And they exposed a broken system that allowed her to be forgotten in the first place. And it leaves us with this one final, really chilling thought. Linda Pagano wasn't lost because her case was too hard to solve. She was lost because of a filing mistake. So the real question isn't just about what happened to Linda. It's how many other victims are out there, waiting in unmarked graves, lost not because of a lack of clues, but because of a simple clerical error.